Lizette, thank you so much for joining us. Downward trend in terms of crime overall, but does South Africans have anything to celebrate? Do we feel more safer as a society?
I think the crime stats do reflect that we are a bit safer when it comes to certain crimes, most notably the violent crime rates. Murder overall has decreased by over 54% since 1994, so that is very good news. Unfortunately, we're not seeing the decreases we would like to see. Our murder rate is still substantially higher than we would like to see it. We're still about 16th in the world of recorded crime murder rates. We are sitting at about 31%, which per 100,000 population, which is still very, very high. It means 43 people on average are being killed per day. But business robberies, at least, we've got some very big concerns about. What
is driving this figure? It's very interesting. We know that we have a lot of reports in the news about bank robberies, heists where big businesses are targeted. What drives this, activity, and why is there this spike at this point?
Well, it's interesting because business robberies are not so much located with big business any longer. We are actually seeing, and it's confirmed by the Consumer Goods Council, the Grant Thornton surveys, that large business is safer. What we are seeing is a huge spike in smaller business robberies. Most notably, about over a third of business robberies are relating to spaza shops and tuck shops. So we're talking about entrepreneurs. And we know that 43% of our businesses in this country has less than 5 people working for them.
What is interesting for me, of course, is would it be fair to say that your bigger businesses have better capacity to secure their premises, to secure their assets, and your small entrepreneurs, the people that we should actually be encouraging and helping, particularly considering our high unemployment rates, are being failed by public police that is meant to, in fact, effectively police, communities and such?
Yes, we can see it like that. I think large business has got this added cost of security, and they complain about it if you look at the surveys, the high cost of security in this country. But you see that these smaller businesses are especially vulnerable because they are high cash businesses, volume businesses, and they have very little security.
Now, let's talk about the business partnerships. We know that in many occasions we have community policing forums, we have very high-level initiatives between private sector players and the police because of the lack of capacity. The fact that there's an increase in crime against business, does it mean that business is not doing enough, or are we talking at a small level where the state is the key player? How does business and police work together to reduce crime?
I think we have seen quite successful partnerships at a national and high level with SABRIC, with the insurance and the consumer goods councils. What we are seeing is that we need more grassroots cooperation. We know that sector policing has played a role. CPFs are playing a role and working with communities. However, it's very difficult to predict where these crimes take place. They happen in suburbs, townships, places where small businesses operate. So you have a very dispersed nature of businesses to protect. But the police need to play a more targeted role in this regard, and that's what the newly announced small business strategy is all about.
Take us through the plans around the small strategy. Is it going to actually pinpoint the problem areas, and does it address the kind of immediate challenges that are faced at that level?
Look, as far as I know, it hasn't been unveiled, but what we have seen, because the ISS has played a role in its drafting, is that we are calling and government is looking at closer partnerships, also looking at increased crime intelligence on the ground within communities, getting more cooperation from the business entrepreneurs on the ground in terms of also learning about security, working and getting these businesses registered and getting SARS involved to also try and eliminate the cash flow, and cash and transit types of nature of these businesses. So it's about a multidisciplinary type of approach that needs to be followed now. Yes.
Of course, I mean, we've unpacked the issues around business. Just at a perceptional level, Lizette, are we beating this idea that South Africa, you know, is not a safe place, particularly when an international investor sits overseas and look at the environment? There was a time in the past where people were very, very nervous, of course. Is that perception now neutralized? Do people feel that this is a safe place for investment, that crime, whilst we have our challenges, is in fact under control?
I think it is stable. I think we have seen, as a matter of fact, the overall serious crime rate is less than it was in 1994. And maybe that's the message we need to start telling our investors. I think if you don't live in, if you don't need to do business in very low income, very socioeconomically challenged areas, you're pretty safe. And I think those are the messages we need to explain to our investors. It's the people that do not have and the people that live in very poor areas that we have a problem with. And that has got the most of the bulk of the crime.
Let's just go through the other categories of crime. What are the challenging areas? I know sexual assault is always a difficult thing for the police. What are the stats saying in this regard?
We are seeing that there is a slight decrease of just under 4% and a slight decrease in rape of just under 2%. However, it is very difficult to say what, you know, whether it's actually increasing or decreasing, because we know that it's got a very high under-reporting rate. And the other challenge with sexual offences or sexual assaults is that we do not know what all the types of crime is. It's sort of a bulk category that's got over almost 60 categories of crimes included. So how safe your children are when it comes to predators, we don't know. How safe we as women are, very difficult to tell.
One of the other things that your institute was raising as a concern was the fact that the current stats is not giving us enough detail on, for example, the service delivery protests and crime associated with that. Now we know, of course, a lot of these protests happen in municipalities and in big metros who are, or which have been identified as key kind of growth points, particularly if you're looking at local economic development. What is it about the stats that obscures the picture at that level?
I think the big issue with the stats is that it's 6 months out of date. So we do not know, Marikana is not captured. We also do not necessarily know where these places are located. Now, we as the Institute for Security Studies are working very hard to try and map these now. And we can see it at a station level, but when it happened, how it happened, and the modus operandi of how a peaceful protest becomes a violent protest is what we need to investigate and study to also predict these. And the big challenge with them is that there are many municipalities. It's difficult for the police to know these things in advance and to allocate resources in advance. So those are huge challenges that we as a nation need to sit and see how we can solve, especially about how we can predict. It's clear that crime intelligence has a problem in predicting these things.
Lizette, well, lots to talk about there still, of course. Thank you so much. That was Lizette Lancaster, Project Manager of the Justice and Crime Hub at the Institute for Security Studies, discussing South Africa's latest crime statistics.